Welcome to a new podcast where we're breaking through and breaking it down with a new girl. Your host, Dawn Piercy. Welcome to a new podcast. My name is Dawn Piercy. I am your host, and I have with me today His Royal Highness Douglas Buchanan Bailey, the Grand Duke of St. Cyriacus and the Tetrarch of Tiggiano. He is in charge of the Grand Ducal House of Bailey and Clan Bailey International and the Order of the Green Cross, helping children and young adults with autism. He is also a martial artist and a fencer. Douglas, welcome to a new podcast. It's great to have you on. How are you doing?
Pretty good.
Good. Now, first off, tell us a little bit about yourself. Clan Bailey International and the Grand Ducal House of Bailey, the Order of Green Cross, and helping children and young adults with autism.
Well, that's a lot. So, the Grand Ducal House of Bailey is not an ancient house. It was created in 2013, and we were enthroned by the Archbishop of the Russian Orthodox Church in America. So he was the patriarch, or like basically the Pope for the Americans. And he was enthroned, so he has the right to do that. The house itself Bailey goes back to the Norman Conquest.
Yes.
The Baileys came in from, I'm sorry, I have a Scotty dog on my lap here. He's trying to get attention. Came in to England from Normandy. So the name itself is a Viking name. There you'll find many different people of the Bailey name with different socials. You'll find barons who are Baileys. You'll find knights who are Baileys. You'll find Baileys kind of everywhere. Mm-hmm. So there's not one Bailey that starts the name off. There's many. Ours is one of the older ones. Mm-hmm. We have ties through our family tree everywhere, but what happens with us is it was through charity work and our family lineage and the combination thereof that brought our family back onto the lines of attention by the patriarch of the Russian Orthodox Church in the Americas. So that's kind of how that happened. The Order of the Green Cross is it's a dynastic order of knighthood, and people say, well, it has to be very ancient to be dynastic. Well, the first generation is where it starts, and it's dynastic by nature, that it's inheritable.
Right.
That was the Grand Master. The second piece we have is the Knights of the True Cross, and they are a chivalric organization. Chivalric organizations are non-profits nowadays. Even the Queen of England's chivalric organization is a non-profit. So, like Bill Gates, who donated, I think it was $10 million to her charity for removing landmines, he received a knighthood for that. So people say, whoa, wait a minute. You didn't buy that. You donated. So they're all charities. So it's a form of social transaction. I tend to see that some of them get very elitist, and that's a whole history of knighthoods that we can get into on another day.
Right.
From the 1100s all the way to today, and it's usually never linear and never clear. It's about as clear as mud sometimes, because there's a lot of things that happened in history that changed things and the way things are operated. So you have I'm going to get into it. So it used to be that royals were not the ones involved heading up the orders and knighthoods. It was the church. And then from the church, it was lay fellows and other knights. And only in the later periods did royals get into it. It became like a social network, and marketing is like, oh, well, you belong to the order that has this monarch over here. He's our favorite this week. And then people would clamor to do it. It's like celebrities nowadays. This is the same thing. And there was a famous baron, German baron, that said when the nobles and the royals entered the orders of chivalry and took them over, that was the end of chivalry. And what he's talking about, it became less about what you were doing and more about who you know. And so I had a very years-long conversation with the Attitude about this, that an Orthodox order of knighthood should be opened up to many different denominations, because building up walls between chivalric orders and people and religions is a negative. You're
right.
You're excluding and you're narrowing your scope of what you can do and who you can honor and contribute with. So after a few years of discussing this, we were able to say, okay, it's an Orthodox order. These orders are Orthodox, including the Order of St. Andrew, first called in the Americas. And you don't have to be of any one denomination to belong to it. You just have to have good character and be able to fit the requirements. And we have a whole page of the booklet on how you do that.
Right.
So that's where we're at now. It's knighthood is no longer protect the roads to Jerusalem and slaughter the enemy that wears black armor and you wear white. It's they've had to morph into charitable nonprofit organizations, and that's where they are now.
Yeah, it seems like our family went from brute force to all charity and military work.
Yeah, they came over.
Right.
William Bailey in 1550 avoided, was it 1550 or thereabouts, in the 1500s, avoided the War of the Roses because some of his other relatives decided one side or the other, and 3 of them died in one generation, while William was very smart and said, well, I'm going to be a clothier. I'm going to make royal clothes to the Tudor courts, and we don't care who my grandfather was, who he was the former king. We don't care. We're just going to make some fine clothes, and we'll be fine.
Right, right. You mentioned, the rose. King Henry VII is not only Bailey, my grandfather, but King Henry VII is my grandfather too. So it's like it's kind of cool that you get to see all of these different ancestors tied in together, and then
our ancestors, because it's funny, your tree comes into the Bailey line for the Grand Ducal House, I think 3 times now. You found it?
I think 4 or 5 times. That's curious. So it's interesting. There's a lot of, when you get back there and you go through this history, you're going to find a lot of political marriages, and you're going to find a lot of alliances that way. My grandmother, my mom's mom, so we're not saying, my uncle, my grandfather, and you're saying 20 generations back. I'm talking about my grandmother was a Buchanan. Her father was Reuben Buchanan, and you can follow his tree back to the beginning of the Buchanan clan. You go back to the right period. Patrick Buchanan was the son of one of the last chiefs. And they now have one of the other cousins is now the new chief of Clan Buchanan. Okay, and see, I have Buchanan too on mine. So
yeah, they were interesting. Yeah. Marriages all the way back.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's in a not so nutshell. That's what we do with the chivalric orders. Is one of them is the Knights of True Cross covers hospitals, people in hospitals, giving aid to that to people in need there. The Dynastic Order, the Green Cross, is about autism, and we've done charity events, and we've covered group autism therapy for a year.
Yes, and for our audience too. If you were wondering, I actually am the Indiana State Regent for Clan Bailey under the Grand Ducal House of Bailey, and have put together my first annual fundraiser for helping children and young adults with autism. It's completely 501c3, so tax deductible. After the interview, head over to Clan Bailey fundraisers here on a new podcast and check that out.
For the people, I hate to interrupt you, for the people who are donating, if you let me know who donated and their address, if they would like that, I will personally send them a handwritten note, or at least an official note from the Grand Ducal House.
Okay.
A letter of thank you, because I really appreciate it. We're working on several projects, so it's a a lot.
It is. It is. I think it's being able to structure it and have a time for each of it, so that way, it's running nice and smooth. Tell us about your history with martial arts in Thailand.
Oh, well, I wasn't in Thailand, so.
Okay. Well, your was it your sensei's in Thailand?
Japan.
Japan. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Did you mention Thailand though before?
No.
No. It must have been somebody else I was talking to. That was
my college roommates were from Thailand and China, so.
Okay. Okay. Well, fill us in on that.
I think what's getting into the charities and helping people with disabilities is kind of a very full circle issue. Growing up, I'm dyslexic, and if you ever watch a good documentary on knowing what it's like for people who were going to school pre Disabilities Act, then you're going to find the documentary is Journey into Dyslexia, Netflix or one of those pay stations. It's a brilliant documentary about how school just finites, and we focus on correct spelling, transcribing phonemes, which are the lettering and the alphabeting, and we put a lot of emphasis in school on that. Now, when you look at the broader spectrum of what drove the Industrial Revolution, what drove everything else, it wasn't this. Writing and the English language was only for spelling formalized at 1900 by a prisoner. So you look into the dictionary, it's like, well, it's only been 100 years that we've standardized the English language and its spelling. And it's started to take the major focus, and we started to more teach to test than we have done an organic, holistic knowledge like what you would do with the Greek schools. So it becomes an overriding, you have to be good at this very narrow field in schools for people. And if you're good at this very narrow field, you're going to be great in life. And there's a lot of things in life you can do and not be great at your grammar. Now, I have spell check and the computers and Grammarly, and between the two of those, you can write some brilliant papers.
Yes.
But before the computer, you were pretty much isolated off and you were kind of excluded out of things. So going through and to get college degrees for me was a struggle and a half. And I really don't like to see that for other people. And I've kind of wandered. So in martial arts, you can keep this too. You do big roundabout circles. So I'll cover the entire octopus.
Okay.
What happens in school is you get bullied, and you get bullied and you get beat on. And I was, of course, a good child. I went to all the churches, and my grandma's church that was Nazarene, where you couldn't show your elbows, and you had to, grandma wore gloves and yell her hallelujah, and the fire and brimstone preachers that were there that were teaching Dante's Inferno instead of something out of the Bible. So They had a very interesting and unique focus of what that was. And then I was splitting that between the other church that we went to, which was more Catholic oriented, Orthodox. And they're more pacifist, and so I was always turn the other cheek. And you're not supposed to act out. You're not supposed to be abusive to people. And I really took it to heart, and I still do. In school, because I was dyslexic, the teachers would not allow it. They would ridicule you in front of class and pull you from first grade on. And since you were ridiculed by the teachers, that's an okay and a green card for other kids to come up and pick on you. And I don't mean pick on you like you say, "Oh, Billy, ha 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 ha." Second grade, I was choked out in front of the teacher by another student. I had other kids throwing my homework on a daily basis out the back of the school bus windows while 4 of them stood around you. And if you didn't let it happen, you got beat, physically punched and kicked in the back of the bus. You move to the front, you get off the bus, and then you would be just mobbed when you were on the way to school. Growing up in a rural community with a very well-known family, and even though you, at the time, don't have the funds and the finances, because my family decided to spend everything and go traveling generations before I was even.
Same here. Well, yeah.
Well, we're distant cousins here.
Yeah, so, I know, right?
Yeah. So those funds and finances and all the land, that was pretty much gone in 1870. Right. It was gone. I can get into some other stories, but like the Baileys, we had millions set aside that were coming towards us, and we sent 1920. One of our family members went back to England to go pick up the bank account that matured from the Bank of England, and this is the 1920s. So those nice 2 ladies that were Baileys decided to disappear into Europe with millions of dollars. So I'll tell you that one. I actually have that written down from the Bailey meeting notes from Clan Bailey around 1900s. It's a really interesting story, and one of our relatives wrote a poem about it called "Where Would I Be with the Bailey Millions Today?" So we had a lot of that stuff. But you going back in, so we're not rich at that point. Still aren't. I'm a working guy. Like I said, in this house, look around, all antiques. Like one of my friends says, I have used furniture. It's much cheaper to have this than new. You just kind of keep stuff around here. I don't know if you can see
antiques are the best.
Yeah, they last longer.
They do.
So,
they do. They really do. There's nothing like a nice antique.
Yeah, because these chairs behind me, they've lasted for 100, some of them 150 years. They're still going. You buy something new, it lasts you, 10, 15 years. So, I really appreciate my family having older stuff. Anyway, you going to school, you're abused, you get beat on. I was teaching myself how to sight read. If anyone's into education, I learned how to sight read 126 words by the time I was in 3rd grade. I had no clue what one letter meant to the next. You go through the motions of sounding things out, but I don't know what that was. And so I just learned, kind of like learning Chinese or Japanese, kanji. I learned that these symbols meant this. And I taught myself that. And I had a 3rd grade teacher that caught the fact that I was dyslexic, and it took me up to get me formally diagnosed. And then there, my parents had to pay for a private tutor to work with me.
Now, did they?
Back in the 72, they never.
My dad used to cut out, because I suffer from dyslexia too. And my dad used to cut out like a piece of cardboard, and he would cut a strip. And then I would put that over the words. So the sentence I was reading, that was the only thing that would show up. Yeah. And then it seemed...
Your eyes don't wander.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, because then the words weren't jumbling around. Or the letters,
They'll jumble, but not as bad.
Right.
It keeps you
they still jump, but you can read it. Right.
The other thing I have is I will sit there, like the other day, I'm helping my daughter write something out. And so I'm looking at what I'm writing, and I'm saying the letters. And as I say them, I'm writing, but I'm not looking at the paper. And I stop and look down, and I said one letter and then the next letter, but I wrote them in reverse order. Now, that's not because when you're dyslexic, it's not because you're stupid. It's because your brain, somewhere in the transfer skills, went and said, okay, it's this order, and then flips it on you, and in the opposite order. There's nothing you can do about that. It's just like, oh, that's curious, and then you fix it again.
Right.
And it's interesting. It still translates into typing and other issues. So it's much with computers. It's much less of an issue today than it was ever when everything's handwriting. I avoid handwriting as often as possible because it's just I'm going to go for a D and you're going to go up, and all of a sudden you go like this and you're going down.
Right.
What happened there? So it's actually it's out of your control. So you just kind of. But going through this in school and getting beat up, I saw this movie on TV that was a guy that was learning how to fight, and he was a good guy, and people would beat on him, and he'd defend himself, and he would fight back, and he wasn't a bad guy.
Right.
And I thought to myself, well, that's what I want to be. I'm 8 years old. I want to be able to fight back and not be considered a bad guy because I go to church, you turn the other cheek, you don't fight back, you're meek. God shall, the meek shall inherit the earth. Don't fight back. Don't do this. I ran out of cheeks. I really did. I got tired of turning around and getting beat up and having things thrown out. And being a larger kid, because I'm 6'3" now, I was a big kid who was a very passive kid. And then they say, hey, look, let's go get the big guy because he's not going to fight back. And I can feel powerful, and that empowers him somehow. Or it gets their angst out from whatever bullying they're getting at home. So I went into martial arts in '72 and in traditional karate, which was Shitaru, it was Hayashi Hashitaru. And I got to train with Turo Hayashi, the founder, who learned from Mobuni and some other people who brought Okinawan karate to Japan.
Okay,
and
nice.
Turo Hayashi actually trained with them and learned from them. And then in the 80s, I went from 72 to the 80s playing internationally. And then I went what they call Ronin for a while. I didn't affiliate with anyone for a number of years. And then I went to the Mobuni school, so Kenzo Mobuni, which was the son of Turo Hayashi's instructor, which was Tenmo Mobuni. Kenzo had his own school, which was Seito Shitaru. I trained with those for a while, and then people like John Sells. I ended up 6th degree black belt, which is where I ended up at. And then you want to talk about fencing. While I was teaching karate, I had to get some PE credits in. And I was teaching as a martial arts instructor. I trained a lot of seminars. I went to different schools. I trained with Stephen K. Hayes just for a brief period in Tacoma when he first came back over and was introducing ninjutsu to the United States. Which reminds me of a bad dad joke. So, yeah, that's why the hipster burned his lips. He drank his coffee before it was cool. So I took ninjutsu before it was cool because no one knew what it was, and I was just a martial arts geek. It was interesting to watch the different movements because the kinetics are different than when you look at the traditional karate or fencing, and you go to any of his books back in the day. Those are what you learned. It was on books or videos. And his books, you got snippets between step A, B, C, and D, but the flow between A, B, C, and D is going to be different if you're taking a Korean-based, a Japanese-based, or a Chinese-based. So when you actually learn from the source and you see them move the flow, it's different. And you go, I see. That works better. That makes more sense.
What has been your favorite style so far?
I like Shitaru better. For me, it doesn't have the Shotokan stances that are way low. And Funakoshi, when he started Shotokan, he said, we do these really, really ridiculously low stances and these really difficult back stances, which are no good on your hips, because it's going to train your legs to be stronger. And then decades later, his students asked him, so when do we stop doing the really, really low stances that aren't natural to the martial arts and our predecessors? And he says, when you're really, really good and you don't need to train anymore. So he basically just adapted it, and it stuck that way. Seito Shitaru, instead of the back stances and the really low stances, your horse stance isn't nearly as low as these things where your butt's as low as your knees and your mobility is gone, and you have a Han Zenkutsu or a half Zenkutsu, and you have a full Zenkutsu, and you have your box stance, and so you have the rising and sinking abilities that still stay with the more Okinawan roots of it, but still have some of the Japanese flavor. And the reason I like Shitaru is Mobuni back in the 20s in the 30s had Gokenki, who used to train. It was one of his big buddies. He was a tea salesman.
Okay.
From Okinawa. He was a white crane kung fu master. So he would train with Mabuni, and Mabuni would then made several white crane katas for the forms with him, and they're still in the system. And if you're a higher end Shitaru guy and you've learned those white crane system katas, you can actually go and talk to the white crane system guys in China. After the purge in China, when they had the revolution, the Cultural Revolution, they got rid of a lot of the monks and the kung fu systems, and a lot of them back in the 1980s, actually even to the 90s, were hauling the people who learned from Gokenki and knew those forms to bring them back to China, because the Cultural Revolution had decided to shoot.
Now, is that similar to, like, I grew up studying Shurei Goju-ryu. Is that similar to that?
Goju-ryu would be very similar.
That's what I thought.
Oh, you're never down. Rarely are you down in a really, really low stance in Goju-ryu.
Right.
Yeah. And so it would be very similar. I can actually pull up some flow charts of where Goju-ryu comes from and who their instructors were and how this all ties together. It's pretty interesting history. But everyone's kind of picked up the flavor. They were all very similar before they hit Japan. Japan, the governing body decided that they each had to come up with their own style. Each had to come up with their own name. Before that, it was just karate, or actually it was called China Fist. And then it comes to Japan, and wait, we don't want this foreign stuff. We got to make it fit our culture. And America does this a lot too. So that's why they made it look more aesthetical for the Japanese people, and they changed the name from originally karate was pronounced a different way, and it meant China Fist.
Okay.
Well, nobody China Fist, so they changed it to karate, which means the formulation is kind of pronounced the same, but it means empty hand.
Right, empty-handed. I fight empty-handed to protect myself. You know, before
the old dojo-kun. Yeah.
That
dojo-kun's very wide and broad. But anyway, that's how I ended up into that.
Now, do you get into weaponry too?
Yeah, you have kabuto, which is part of the karate syllables for a lot of the schools. So you end up learning how to use the bow.
Okay.
When people in America call it the bow staff, because we use the archery bow, and they go, you're into archery, you don't know how to use a bow. So they use bow staff, which is really saying I fight with a staff, but you're using two different languages. And I've always found that a peculiarity within America, just say I use a staff.
Now tell us about fencing.
I needed some PE credit when I was in college and teaching karate full time, and I was, fighting nationally, internationally back in the 80s. So I found that a fencing master, French fencing master, Oriel, was teaching in Oregon at the community college. He had a class. I said, I need a credit here. I'm in my 20s. I'm going to take some saber. So I went in, spent time training, and he taught me how to do saber. That was interesting because I'd already had decades of other, Japanese sword, spear.
What about chucks?
Oh yeah, nunchaku.
Those are my favorite.
I like them, but tonfa and some other things seem to be very well. I find short staff is much more universal for a functional weapon. So it's long range, it's mid range, it's short range, and it's a stick. It's a walking stick. Everyone can use it. It's not illegal. That's why I like that. Flails, they have their use and function. They have fixed and flexible weapons, but they're fun. They're good toys. I like I said, short staff better than long staff. Sai and Kama are much. I don't know. They're least favorite. There's some very interesting Sai kata. more police weapons in Okinawa, and they're fun. But on a regular self-defense base for today's society, you're not going to walk around like Leonardo and Donatello.
Oh, I know, right? They'll be like, "You're going to jail," and I'll be like, "Wait, I got my belt right here."
Yeah, you're going to be stopped every block if you're carrying that kind of stuff with you.
Right,
So yeah, if you got a walking stick, and that's where I found the saber very interesting, because if you take saber, a gentleman's walking stick, don't go to the concealed swords in the walking stick. That'll get you a felony in California. But they have a lot of the saber moves. Gentlemen back in the late 1800s would use the same saber movements with their gentleman's cane and their walking stick. So it's interesting. There are also variations or single-handed variations of short staff work.
Mm-hmm.
I find that unique. There's a lot of cross references in there. Saber work is really nice. Only did it for about 6 months with him, and I was more interested in connecting the saber and the walking stick with walking stick and Okinawan systems and Chinese systems.
Mm-hmm.
And then working on some older treaties by the Scottish fencers and the old treaties, and trying to figure it out, because I would go to the Highland Games since I was a kid, and I would see people with those basket-hilt Scottish swords and say, "Well, how to use those?" And they give you the answer, the pointy end goes that way. Well, that's
I can't wait to go to the Scottish Highland Games. I'm excited.
Yeah. Oh, you should be.
Yes.
It's a lot of fun. Everybody at these places, it's like family waiting to meet you. You say, and there's a whole other history going into that. But if you belong to a clan or a family and you find them, you go to like what you're going to run as a tent, and then someone says, "Oh, my grandmother or my great grandmother was a Bailey," and
right.
They're a cousin. You welcome them to like long lost family. Come on in, have a seat, sit down. Let's have some fun. Let's discuss this. How did you do that? How did you get to where you were? And it opens up a conversation. And in today's society, people are very isolated from each other. People don't interconnect. They aren't kind to each other. The web creates the interweb. I said it. It's gonna get pissed. I said interweb. I do that. I learned that just outside my kids. It's the internet. I call it. So people get on that and they troll each other. People would rather be negative news travels faster than a positive story.
Oh, yeah, I know.
And I would rather have people come to a family event, a family-oriented event, meet people who are friendly, who really are genuinely interested in knowing the story. They can sit, they can talk. If you're a member of Clan Bailey and there's a Bailey tent, or even if you're not a member and you want to show up, say, "Wow, I brought all this stuff. Can I put this behind your tent and I'll put my name on it? Can you keep it safe?" And yeah, they will.
I'm bringing a herd. No.
You put your stuff back there and no one's going to touch it till you get back. Nobody will. It's a safe place. You want to come in, you're tired. Oh, I've been walking around these events. It's size of it depends. Some of them are pretty small areas. But you go to Seattle, you go to Portland, you go to North Carolina, and any of these other games, they're huge.
Mm-hmm.
And they're massive events. And you get tired, you find your clan tent, you go in, and if you have a folding chair, you sit down, have a drink of water, and you sit and relax for a while. You have a place to take a break that's safe and friendly, and people that are your distant cousins.
Right.
And it's really a unique situation. And I have very rarely met anyone grumpy at these places. So it's refreshing. And you can sit there, like I was raised around there, and I started out helping people. And it's a very unique network of people you'll end up with. If you go to them, you get to know them, and you get to know the other clans. It doesn't have to be just your ancestors. You know them. You get to and you interact with the other people around you. And then you end up with a social network. I know in Oregon we had, I did hobbyist blacksmithing and metalwork and leatherwork. Somebody else was an electrician. Somebody else was a landscaper. Other people were welders. And if one of the people in this community had a problem, they needed something done, and they couldn't do it, they just called their clan rep. Like call you, and you're connected with them. And they say, hey, I know some people, we can come over, we'll do the volunteer crew, and we'll come out. It's something that they used to have in the 1600s with your clan family unit, like a tribe.
Mm-hmm.
And go to that and you say, hey, I need help here. We're all helping each other. Now, you can't be the person that sits there and goes, hey, I want this free, I want this free, hey, who helped me? And you just sit there. Everybody has to put in,
right.
Otherwise it doesn't work. Everybody has to be willing to at least once or twice within a year, if it's called, because it's usually not called more than every other year that someone comes up with something.
Right.
Or someone asks advice and they put it into the clan site, and then the people will then say, oh, well, I know this reference to this reference, and it makes your social network, and it's a real social network. It's not an artificial, how many people are on my whatever these social networks. I'm not on them very often, or at all. It's not one of these things where just thousands of people are following you for some reason.
It's just real networking. Real networking. Right.
Yeah, it's an actual family. I can talk to these people. These people will come and help me out, or they will give me advice. They're not going to ask for anything else, and it's a good thing. Clan Bailey itself is. We don't care if you're a Bailey. You could be someone who just identifies with what we're doing.
Right.
We're recreating a Celtic community or pan-Celtic community, because Baileys were Vikings, they were Irish, they were Scot, they were Welsh, they were. You can find them all the way over in Russia, because
we went everywhere. Right. I think they found my DNA in Russia too, by Kazakhstan, and then Italy and Turkey and Hungary and
right. The Celts were mercenaries. They hired out. If you look at ancient Greece, they hired out Celtic mercenaries, and they knew the difference between a Celt, the larger group, and a Celt, the individual Celt people. You and they were mercenaries in Greece way back before they fell to Rome. And they would talk about these long mustachioed people with torques around their neck that would go to the pubs, and they had the little tattoos on themselves, the tribal tattoos, and they would sit around and brag and drink about, and sit around and drink and brag about their military powers. I know a lot of Celts today that still do the same thing that are vets. They go to the pub, they grow that big long mustache or the beard, and they talk about their good old days. So nothing's really changed in a couple thousand years.
Time travel. I want to go back to how you got started with helping children and young adults with autism. Where did that inspiration come from?
Well, I've been in special ed. I retired as working in special ed for 25 years, and now I'm going back through college again to become a art teacher.
Mm-hmm.
But having gone through the school system, I got to tell you, there's nothing special about special ed. They're better now. They are far better now, but a lot of times it's not a fun thing to go through.
Right.
It's not a fun environment. You don't ask, and I'm talking about real special ed, real autism. We're forgetting about dyslexia. It's not fun. And I watch these kids go through school, and I would think, man, that's not good. And I didn't like people bullying people from my background, and I would see these kids not getting treated well. I became a karate instructor to help kids to stop being beat on from bullies, because I worked in the poorest neighborhood. I didn't work in the rich neighborhood and have a McDojo that was making millions of dollars. I had, when I was in my 20s, I was doing fair, I wouldn't even say fair to middling. If you managed a McDonald's, you made more than me. If you were a shift supervisor back in the day, you made more than me. I did it because I loved it and I liked what I was doing. I went into school because one of my students' parents was working in special ed and said, you got a real good knack for helping kids, and I'd like you to do this. Try it out. And here I was, like, it was medical, it was dental, things that you didn't have as a martial arts instructor. And it was another year of college I picked up, besides my other 3 years of arts and graphic design. I took college I just like college. I like going to school, professional student. and it just felt really organic. One of the things I thought about during some of the difficult times was you have a kid who's severely disabled or impacted. You're working with him. And one of the things that was my first few weeks of actually in the field, and I had to ask myself, because it was really difficult. I'm not going to describe it to you, but it was really difficult. And I had to ask myself, if I was impacted with this disability and I was in this situation that through no fault of my own, this is just the way it is, how would I like to be treated? And it's with respect and with understanding. And then I've taken that and I've put that through. It's just kind of the model of my life. When the working with chivalric orders as the chief of Bailey before the Grand Duke titles came in, you're just a chief of a clan. And I just say that, and some people go, "Well, it's important." It is, but it's not. Doesn't
a lot of responsibility comes with your title. It does. So
right.
Yeah.
So I was getting put in charge of these chivalric orders, these knighthood orders, and my wife says, "Fine, you have the titles, you have these knighthood orders. What are you doing with them? Right. What are you going to do with them?" And I said, "Well, they got to be here to help people, really. And then how are you going to help people with these titles? And how are you going to help people with knighthoods? I don't see how that works. You got to think of a way that it's going to work, that it fits you and how we are. We help people. Right. How are you going to make it happen?" And then that was the catalyst of it. From there, my daughter has ADHD and some learning disabilities. How do I want people to perceive my kids? How do I want people to would have liked to have perceived me? How do I want people to have perceived working with the kids that I work with in the population? Autism doesn't go away when you're 20.
No, it doesn't. And being
services do, but the disability doesn't.
Being a mom of a child on the autism spectrum disorder has so many challenges, but so many rewards. And I am so excited to be helping with this fundraiser. I mean, I was so elated. I think I cried for like an hour, and I was like, "Yay, I get to help kids," because it's so deep in my heart, and I want to do so much. And it's like, this is a way to be able to reach out to the community and get these kids and young adults the help that they're needing.
Yeah, there's not enough people joining chivalric orders like this. Most of them go to these orders, you have to be invited in, you have to pay $3,000-$4,000 just to get past the gatekeepers. Then you go to the event, then you have to pay a few thousand here, a few thousand there, pay for your airfare, pay for your fancy dinner and everything else. And then by the time you join the chivalric orders, the majority of them, you're into it about 10 grand. And I was talking to his beatitude, God rest his soul, and our mission was different. I was thinking, okay, why does it have to break the bank? There's many people out there who live a chivalric life, follow the ideals, and because they're not multimillionaires or even 100,000aires, they cannot get the recognition for the work they do and the service they do. So I said, look, let's keep this social bar where you need it. And the social bar, by the social bar, I mean, are you doing charitable work? Are you living a decent life? Do you have, are you a police, fire? Are you working as a teacher? Are you doing something that benefits society? If not, are you doing charity work?
Right.
Are you doing something in society that is a reputable job? And you don't have a criminal record. If you have that, and you want to take an oath as a knight and focus on one of our charities, I don't see where not having
money comes
hundreds of
into it.
thousands of
Right.
dollars should be a bar for you.
Right.
If it wasn't a bar for our ancestors back in the 1200s, you wanted to do this service, you could afford to do this, you could do this.
Mm-hmm.
You were brought in, and you could do it. As it got to be more of a social status, instead of someone on a horseback with a stick that would knock other people down and make them dead, now it's, can I provide service for a chivalric order?
Right.
Can I help the chivalric order with its mission, which is helping people in hospitals or with disabilities? My dog is just wants in, and I'm not going to let her in. Only because she's going to tear up the house. So, yes, you have to forgive her, Molly, and her little barking.
I forgive her. I'm sure everybody does.
She just wants to play. And I was like, okay, you were playing in the house, and you were quite a distraction. So I put them out with the ball. Now they want back in. But if people meet these standards, I'm not going to be a bar for it. I have stopped people from joining who could afford it if they saved up 6 months and they could come up with the travel fare, which we do it in the United States every other few years. We don't do it frequently.
Mm-hmm.
But hey, I could travel from point A to point B in the United States. I could show up and get a hotel, and I could pay your, whatever, the $800 to passage fee for the background check and all the regalia, and I meet the requirements. I filled it out and then passed. But if they're at an economic level that they can't, it's going to hurt them to pay their annual dues of $100-something. If they're at that level, I won't take them. And I won't take them because if you can't afford to take care of yourself and you can't afford to do that properly, you're not going to be able to help other people.
Right.
I would rather have you take care of yourself first and make yourself, in your situation, survivable and livable.
Right.
Once you're at that stage, then we can look at that. But on the other hand, I've had people that had millions of dollars, and I had one case way early on. A fellow wanted it because he liked the shiny badges and the title, and there's a lot of that draw with these organizations.
Right.
And he was willing to donate hundreds of thousands of dollars to our chivalric organization, and nobody makes a penny. Nobody's on a payroll here. Nobody's making any money whatsoever. But his character was so lacking. He was going to wear him around, use it as a boasting tool and as a manipulation thing. And we knew people, and we did character references on him.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just a no-go for us. There's a lot of people that in the chivalric orders that are called gong collectors, like the Chinese generals or the North Korean generals. You see them with these badges going down their chest all over, and they're studded with them. There's a lot of people in the chivalric orders that just like to collect them, just to collect them. And you can't avoid that. And some people social climb, and you can't really know who these people are unless they have an absolute set history and you know it.
Yeah.
So it's a thing.
Mm-hmm.
Sadly. And then you have other people that really do belong to several organizations because they do like to do the charity work, and they have the time, and that's okay.
Yep.
So you have to split that out.
Yep.
I don't know. We kind of keep going around things.
Do you have anything that you're working on behind the scenes that you can let us in on?
Currently, I was approached. Let me move the camera here. I was approached a few days back, and one of these seamstresses, I used to do props and fight choreography. One of the seamstresses I've worked with before had someone that was in a, I'm going to put a video up on it pretty soon. It's pretty horrible. She was in a hit and run accident. She was riding her motorcycle, and someone decided to take a turn, leave their lane, go way into her lane, slam her motorcycle and herself up against the divider. It's a side street,
Mm-hmm.
and then her turn. So they just veered off, smashed her over, and then left. She has a nerve damage to her right arm, that her entire right arm is paralyzed, and they've had to do several surgeries to come in and take different muscles.
That's so sad.
And she's young, and they had to graft them into her shoulder just so she could get this minimal movement like this. And they said, well, we can do a bionic arm, and we can get this arm to move off this, and you can use this motion. Well, it was $100,000. Her insurance would never cover it. So she's left with this arm and a permanent sling. And then from there, she's like, well, I've got this movement. I want to use this for therapy. And the physical therapist says, well, we'll cover the piece that goes on your arm here, right? Mm-hmm. And we can cover that piece. But the shoulder strap really is only covered once a year. And we can't do any adaptations for a band that's going to help you play the guitar, because you can use that one little muscle and you can get this to go up and down. We're not going to cover that because that's not your written physical therapy plan. Because I used to make props, and I do leather work and stuff for fun. She called me, and I said, okay, let me see what she does. Let me see this. And it was a shoulder piece, which I could easily make. And so I talked to the head of the Chivalric Orders, and I said, look, I'll donate my time. It's probably about $500 to make each one of these things if you counted my time included. And let's come up with 3 arm braces for her, shoulder straps,
right,
and some adaptations for the arm brace to fit her personality, because she's a guitarist, she's a singer, and she's into the rock and roll scene. And I said, great, I'm going to make 3 different braces for her, the order, and we're going to do a fundraiser for this to cover the cost of materials. And I bought the materials from the order. They gave us an okay, let's do this. And I think the materials really only come up to less than $400. And in the end, she's going to have 3 arm braces.
Nice.
One of them, since I'm an artist, I'm going to make it look steampunk because she's a guitarist. It will have all the function of the regular one. It's going to be steampunk. She likes to go in Ren fairs, so I'm going to make one that looks like gladiator armor, but it's going to be her sling and her harness. And another one I'm doing in heat molded plastic.
Okay. And see, that's the type of brace I have on my leg, is the heat molded, where they take a cast and then they take the plastic and heat mold it on there. So
yeah,
it keeps my foot from bending because of the lack of Achilles there. But I want to get like a steel reinforced one with like some engravings and carve it, and maybe put like some rhinestones in it. I thought that would.
Oh, the rhinestones, yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, those are fun. So I'm going to do one that looks like fantasy armor, and it's going to be done in thermoplastics. It's going to be light. It's going to be foam padded. It's going to have all the straps that she needs, and it's going to be a little bit glam. And it's going to be silver chromish, and it's going to have little gems stuck in it. And I said, this is for formal occasion. So when you go out in the evening, as your rock and roll thing, you can wear this to formal occasions, and that way your brace isn't going to be just your brace.
It's going to be a part of you, and you make it.
Right. It's going to be art. It's going to be art. What is your brace going to be? It's not just, oh, look at that person with a brace. It's going to be, look at that person with that art on him. Look at that's kind of cool.
They're going to want one.
Right. It's not going to. Yeah. It's not going to stigmatize you as like, look at that brace. It's like, hey, that lady's got armor on. Oh, look at that steampunk setup that lady has. That's really cool. So it's going to camouflage it as art, and it's going to be functional. And I'm all about functional art.
Heck yeah.
So, and nobody does this. I can't really say I'm doing I can't do the arm brace part because that's the medical part, but I have a mold I took of her medical brace, and I can make leather sleeves to go. I can make thermoplastic sleeves for that. So we can decorate that piece out, and I've already made the adaptations so she can hang a medical band on it that's very lightweight, and she can actually strum her guitars now. So I'm adapting this, all 3 of them, so she can do what she needs to do. The medical field's just not going to cover because...
Now, is that the leather piece that you're working on now?
No, the one I'm working on now is a nautical bag.
Okay.
And that's for a friend of ours. she's going through her second cancer surgery. So her husband was in the Naval Command, and she likes nautical purses, which is some of the stuff I do as a hobby. I really don't really sell my work that often. I just like to make it to see if I can make things. So it's kind of a curious bit. I do sell things, and people request things, I make them. That's fine. But a lot of times like this, it's you make it. She requested it because I made one for my wife, and she liked it, and she wanted it more Navy-like. Finishing that one up today. So.
Okay, nice.
She's still in the hospital right now, so by Saturday when she's out of the hospital, my wife's going to take it to her.
Well, I'll send prayers too, because I know that's something hard to go through. I went through that with my mom. So.
Yeah, it's not fun.
No, it's not.
On the upside, one of the girls that the daughters of one of people my wife worked with, she works in the medical field. She was a speech pathologist, so we're always helping people. And one of the ladies at work, her daughter's an honor roll student, and she's really nice, and she helps out at middle school. She helps out with her mom, and she's into whales, and that's that one bag I did, shoulder bag.
Okay.
With the whale with little girl in the boat that was petting the whale.
And I'll put a picture of it too, so our audience can see it. So if you go to our platform on anewpodcast.com, I've provided a click his picture, and it will take you straight to his bio page where all the links are there, and you can see the picture of some of his leather work there too, because it's really good.
Yeah. I just have fun with it. I kind of create the things. Started off prop working for Warner Brothers a while ago. We did one film that lasted 2 years of prop making, which really got me into it. So it was fun. But yeah, we did that one because she was into whales, and she liked the sea. And when she got that, she was so happy and ecstatic. And I love that. I like making people happy.
Right.
The world's got enough negativity in it, and that's why
it does. And
that's why we did the plan. Bring people back together.
And that's I wanted to ask you too, if there is one thing that you could say to the world, what would it be?
Be kind to each other. Enjoy your family, because you're not going to wish, at the end of the day, you're not going to wish for more money, more power, more fame. You're going to wish you had more time with the people that matter. You're not going to wish for all the other stuff, because that's fleeting. It doesn't really matter. But what you do for other people, that's what people are going to remember. They're not going to remember for you, oh, look, Bob had that fancy car. Well, what happened to Bob? Bob's dead. The car, he sold it. Bob passed away. Well, what was Bob like? Oh, Bob did, charity. He helped people. People are going to remember that and pass that kindness down for generations.
Yep.
And that's the kind of world we live into. Not who could say something mean about somebody on the internet and feel better about themselves by grinding somebody else temporarily under their heel. Blowing out somebody else's candle doesn't make yours brighter.
No, it does not. That's a fact.
The world with the politics, and you can say I'm kind of not really Republican, but the world of politics and the social society right now is at such a divide. I've seen this coming for decades, and I've always said people just need to be kinder to each other. Yeah. Because we have more in common than we do not in common. Because we all have moms, we all have dads, we all grow up in whatever country we're in. There's more similarities than we have differences. But we stand on these little molehills of differences and are willing to die on them nowadays. That it's so counterproductive for the society to go where it needs to go. To be healthier, safer, more productive, kinder. We're running off a cliff the way we're going right now. And it's not something I like. So just get angry on something on the web. Just sit back and say, in 5 years, is this really going to matter? If it's something that's atrocious, say something. But if it's just somebody's just being a knucklehead, let it go. Don't fester on it. Let it ruin your day, because they're not being stable themselves.
Right.
Let it be contagious. For God's sakes, let's not do that.
I know, right? Now, where can our audience follow you to keep up with what you've got going on?
I just have my regular Facebook account. I check in on it like a couple times a day, but I really don't post that much about exactly what I'm doing. If you belong to the clan, we have I think that was 40 year. We have our newsletter that comes out quarterly. If you belong to the Chivalric Order and you're doing their charity work, that's another letter that comes out quarterly. But I post little things. I mean, like once in a while on my social media, and I'm trying to do somebody else's things for the Order and the clan. Was it Instagram and Twitter? It's two things I don't really deal with because I don't have time. I'd rather be than doing typing all day long.
What name are you under on Facebook? So if somebody wants to follow, they can.
I do believe I'm under HRH Douglas Bailey, and you'll see the coat of arms for the Grand Ducal House up there. I usually don't put my face on it, but it's just the big blazon of a coat of arms on it. It's registered in the African heraldry, which is really interesting. All my coats of arms are either in South Africa or the African Heraldry Association of Uganda under His Majesty King Solomon of the Banyuro Katara Kingdom, who I have a treaty with. So I find that there's other social issues dealing with elitism. I'm not really, the way it's abused. Not yes, you have prestige and title. Yes, you can have your ancient family history, and yes, you can have all this other stuff. But don't use that as an excuse to grind other people down. And that is something that goes on as well.
Absolutely. And for our audience, if you want to know more about the Dynastic Order of the Green Cross, you can go to dotgc.org, and there's more information there.
Yeah, I'll be posting the video up about the fundraiser for this lady to just cover the expenses of the parts. And if we get more than that would allow me, if somebody else, once this gets done and she posts what we do for her on her site where they talk about people with similar disabilities. Right. If there's somebody else who wants that done, then the Order would have enough money to yet do it again. And that's a good thing. So right now you have a lot of viewers out there. You have 1,500, 1,500.
Well, no, we're pushing out 45,000 emails a week, and we're in over 60 countries and 16 streaming platforms.
So $1,
right?
at that volume, $1 coming in would cover arm braces for people with issues.
You're right. You're absolutely right. And that's why I think that fundraising and charity work is very important, because when it comes down to it, if everybody would give $1, then
it doesn't seem like much, but community as a community, it adds up greatly.
Yes, it does.
My personal pet project I want to have done in the next 3 years is an equestrian center, and a center for people to come in, and like a priory for the knighthood for people to come in, and they can do meetings, and they can do whatever community event they want to do there.
Right.
But I want to have a writing center where people with autism can come and not have to pay. I want to have a writing center that can get the quick equine therapy, and it's at no service. And if you're doing the post-traumatic stress disorder, it helps for vets. They could come out there and run. But to do that, we're going to need, right now, the place I'm looking at now, a couple places I'm looking at, you're looking at $800,000 for the property.
Yeah, it's not cheap.
It's not. No. So none of these projects like this are cheap. You're looking at the property is so much money, then getting people, and we have someone who just passed the grant writing for us. Once we have the property, we can do the grant writing.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to be able to cover a therapist and their hours, because yes, there are charity works that people can donate the charity time out there, but there aren't many people who want to take their PhD degree and work for free and take 8 hours a day working for free.
Right.
Because you have, like I said, you have to be able to take care of your family as well as
absolutely.
So if the charity has enough money to subcontract out a writing therapist a few days a week or 7 days a week, then we would have it there. But that all comes with the volunteers from the order. That comes with people who want to support the Grand Ducal House at the on our GoDaddy site. If you want to become a member or associate or that's not a nonprofit. It's an LLC that does charitable work, but it's structured differently because they're separate. They're linked because they're through me, but that fund can go in there as well. What I ended up doing is I may end up selling my house and just moving to where I can do it because it's something that I feel really strongly needs to be done.
Right.
And if I have to kick my house into it, I will. If I can't, then it's just going to remain a pipe dream until people can get behind it and say, you know, I think you're right. If we can do this here, we can grow. And I'm also trying to work with the Qatar Kingdom and help them fund a school. And I've been talking with His Majesty out of Guyana, and he needs, if people go to our site and donate money and say, hey, I want this to go to the school in Guyana, and you can come up with $500 to $2,000 to $3,000, that will actually finish a 2-room schoolhouse for him.
Wow.
It's
That's
amazing.
a big deal.
It is. They've been exploited by European conquest. They've had resources taken from them, and I don't want to get too political with it. Things that happened in the 1800s because you can't go back and fix it. But where they're at now, he's the legitimate king, and all he's doing is tying other people with titles and chivalric orders together and saying, "Can you help us? I have this project. I'm posting every day when someone says $100, $200. I'm posting exactly where it's going on this building project. And it's just a 2-room school, and he's just trying to better the living conditions. And again, he's not making money out of it. There was a school in the Banjiro Qatar Kingdom that was funded by a single teacher in England, and she took her charity work and she raised money and she had that going. And then when she passed away, there was no one to do that. And so His Highness, His Majesty, actually, His Majesty is actually going to send someone, and is in the process of sending someone over to that school to see what their funding situation is, seeing how the building's being used, and if we can come up with funds, how it can be implemented. So he's got to talk to local authorities, the local tribal chiefs. He's got to talk to the state authorities. So is an independent monarch, but he still has to work within the social structure of the city, municipalities. But if they have a need, and we can throw a couple $1,000s to fund a teacher for a year, $2,000 you can cover in Uganda. You can cover a teacher's salary. They're poor. Guyana, they're worse off, and you know, people need help. I'm trying to limit how thin I can be spread here, because I really do want to have a writing center. If I can get the writing center going, and we can duplicate it and show that it works twice over here, and then we can put an education piece to it. Then if we have enough people on our nonprofit and our chivalric order, we do have people that can get us into the UN, and we can become an NGO. If we become an NGO, then we're looking at hundreds of millions of dollars of charity money that we can then access. And then we can say, we have a proven record, we can do this here. Now let's replicate this in other countries. Can we have a writing center with the school? How can this happen? Okay, without the writing center, because courses are a bit expensive in this whatever country. But how can we get that and get a school going that has the same basis for disability services? if we have the model, we can get the funds, and then we can replicate it in other countries.
Right.
But we have to be able to do that here first. So that's kind of what I'm looking at. And if we can get it done in Uganda, we can get it done in Guyana, we can show where every penny is going to. This being spent wisely.
Right.
And nobody like me or anybody else is taking a paycheck off this. And it's all going to direct access. Then those funds can come in. But we have to be able to do these things in the United States as well first.
Absolutely.
So that's what I'm looking at. If people are interested in what we're doing, by all means, check us out. If joining a pan-Celtic group, which is very Native American, I hate to say it, because you have a chief, you have,
Well, and there's similarities too to the native culture.
The old clans had their shamans, they had their storytellers, they had people that it didn't matter what sex you were, they weren't saying it's a male dominated only, and so there's so many similarities.
Right.
Between here. That's why it works well, and that's why when the Scots came to the Americas, they went further and further west, and they found like kin with the Native Americans. They said, "Hey, I get this. You get this. This is how it should be." And that's why you find a lot of Native Americans with Scot-Irish surnames, is because the Scots and the Irish and the Celts were trying to get so far away from everything else that they ran out of room before they got to China, which is the Pacific Rim. We just couldn't go any further, so yes, this is where we were. But really, if you're looking at something like this, you're looking at a clan family association, something to belong to, by all means, join our site. It's the Pan Bailey site. If you're interested in just the Chivalric Order stuff, look us up, email us, ask us questions. I will answer emails. His Grace the Duke of Lanark will answer emails. We have international artists that are Brian Beatty, who's one of our members, is an international egg artist, and he goes to Bulgaria a couple times a year doing art shows with egg carvings.
Mm-hmm.
And he's been named Humanitarian of the Year 3 times in a row out of Utah. We have several female jousters, and one of them is the PhD. And they're willing to get together to do a Ren fair with us or do a jousting event.
That would be so fun.
Raise money. The problem with the jousting event is everyone wants the money up front, and we're a very small charitable order. So if people can say, hey, we can get the troop there and we'll give you a piece of the gate, you guys bring your jousters in,
right,
and do the event, and this money will go to the charity, and I'm all about that. And I don't see why it couldn't happen. We're still kind of working those little eggs out, and we have 3 very, very renowned jousters in our group, and I think another one from Texas is willing to join, and we'll end up with a good number of them, but we only need 1 or 2 that we have, and then they can bring other jousters in. I'm willing to work with other jousting organizations as long as the charity funds go to the cause that we're trying to do. I don't want to get too spread thin with big,
right.
We can get people here, but you end up with co-working with 15, 20 charities, and say you make, I don't know, let's round it up, 10,000 at the gate. All right, so you have 10,000 a gate. You have your expenses. You end up with 3,000 for your charity event. Yay! I'm not going to turn that down. But then you have to, with the other charities you're working with, you have to split the $3,000 10 different ways.
Right.
Well, now you're not really. You put a lot of work in. The other charities, quote unquote, signed on, but really you're not getting enough to really make an impact and a dent in any one of those 10 charities. It's a supplement, but it's not something that's going to make an impact. And that's where the impact comes in, when you have a bunch of people coming in for one thing. So if you can do it for the one event and the one charity, it doesn't matter. It's a bigger impact, and you can impact someone's life in a positive way, in a bigger way.
Absolutely.
That's what we're trying to do.
Well, I love it. I love it. I do. And it's very honorable, and shows that you have the charity in your heart and the integrity that goes with it, to be able to help these children and these young adults, and not just the children and young adults with autism, but like you said, with special needs.
Yeah.
And it's not always about money. It's not always about money. It's about helping people. And when you help people, people help people. So it kind of goes into like a circle,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's a circle of good, because you're doing something to help somebody else. I always like that thing where you say, hey, I'm gonna do something for you, and let me get this for you. And they say, well, how I can't pay you back. I said, well, the next time you need somebody to ask and needs help, just help them out.
Right.
And paying me back. It's like, paying it forward. That type of stuff I'm all about. You can pay something forward, and that's a good thing. So charity work, unfortunately, to do some of the stuff we need, you do need to have the funds. And it's just the nature of the way the world works.
Yep.
But you can do it if more people join this type of things, more people get involved in what you're doing or whatever they like doing. Because it doesn't have to be like that. If you find something that you like to do, go help your local area. You don't have to be, with the Grand Duke this and whatever. It doesn't have to be the Knighthood Order. But if this speaks to you and this is something you want to help out with, please, we have donate now buttons on there.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to write a note, contact us, and you want to do a donation and you want to say where it's going to. Is it going to Guyana? Is it going to Uganda? Is it going to go to charity here in the U.S.? Is it for True Cross getting whatever we're doing with vets and disabled people? Is it going to the Green Cross for autism? Just write a note in there, and I'll guarantee you someone's going to get back to you.
Yep.
We don't ignore people who want to help.
Absolutely.
We'll help you out, or if you're helping us out, we're definitely going to be getting back to you, and we'll work together. And that's the way it should be.
Yes, it should. It should. And I want to thank you so much for being a guest today on a new podcast. It's been great having you on. And for our audience, if you like and enjoy this episode, please like, comment, and share so other people can get the message, and we can get the message of helping these kids out there. So be sure to share it. And if you feel fit to buy me a cup of coffee once a month for bringing you these episodes, you can do so on our Anchor.fm platform under a new podcast. And a new podcast is also available on iHeartRadio, Apple Podcast, Google Podcasts, and streaming services where available. Until next time, also Celebre.media. Celebre Media LLC is a syndicated TV network, so be sure to check that out too. And until next time, keep it real. This is Don Piercy and His Royal Highness Douglas Buchanan Bailey, the Grand Duke of St. Cyriacus and the Tetrarch of Tiggiano, signing off.